just kind of bad at my job. And I think we've had another close call like this once before, but thankfully it's not a pattern.
Oh, I figured out how to change the name. It's a separate thing. So now it's let me in too.
All right. So let's see. I'm gonna screen share real quick. Share your screens. Go live. Well, hello everyone. Here's a little Midjourney face that I made, and I'm gonna do a bit of a I'm gonna do a little bit of an art study with it and see if we can make something from scratch inspired by this, and then maybe make some creative adjustments to it. Play around with the colors a little bit. Maybe we build on the concept a little bit. I'm gonna be able to, in 2 hours. I've gotten used to doing these kinds of demos. I've been doing more demos of like studies over the last like month or so, and they become something I've really grown to enjoy. And yeah, so I feel pretty comfy doing these right now. First time I did it, oh boy, what a mess. Blank canvas here. It's the same size as the original canvas. And in Photoshop, you can go and arrange multiple windows so that they're up side by side. And you can see we've got this space over here. And you know what? I even have a hand cam these days. Check this out. Where is there it is. Turn on camera. So you guys can see the tools that I'm using. As soon as I close OBS and there we go. So you can see there's my new Azrael Angel of Death huggable plush doll that I just got. This is the prototype. There's a Kickstarter campaign, not Kickstarter, but there's a crowdfunding campaign of mine that just launched this morning for these things. I'm working with a company called Makeship. They do, they make like, what do you call them? Plush toys for content creators, YouTubers and TikTokers and like artists. And, you know, what they do is they work with them to develop a really cool, high quality plush. They help with the design process. They do all the production. They do all the shipping. And I had seen a bunch of campaigns from them, from YouTubers that I watch. And then they emailed me about a year ago. And we have been kicking this thing back and forth for about a year. And today is finally the day. The thing is launching. And, you know, it's exciting. I am just realizing right now, I don't have if you look up Azrael on makeship.com, you can find it. But I don't have a link handy. And I also just realized I forgot to put it in the banner on my website. So after I'm done here, I'm going to go add it to the banner on my website to start to like, you know, get more people over there to go and help support this thing. It's if you see any of my posts around on social media, even if you're not going to buy it, it would be a huge help if you want to click on them, you know, leave a comment, like, retweet, whatever, because the algorithm is so brutal these days. And any amount of help I can get to like make sure that people are aware that this thing's happening. It's only running for 21 days. So it's important that I like make sure that people know about it now, because it's not going to be around forever. And yeah. So what I've got going on here is I've got my classic trusty brush tool. I'm using, I have this, we're actually building a brand new website for all of the digital resources and stuff, at a website called huckleberry.net, huckleberry.art. And is it working? It is. We have a test site up right now where, yeah, we're building it out. Instead of having me have my personal site, we're going to be taking all the info from my personal site and we're going to be adding it to huckleberry.art. And that's where all of my digital resources are going to go. And that includes info about painting programs, tablets, and all of my affiliate links, and also the place where you can get my brushes. In the meantime, you can go to my personal website at vandalhigh.com. So, what are we doing with this thing? I want to get I'm not going to do a really fine drawing. I found that like over the course of doing these, that the number one thing I need to get first whenever I'm trying to do a study is I need to get a sense of the structure. Like, where's the shoulder? Where are the eyes? Where is the head? Where are all the pieces of all the things in general? And so I'm looking for areas of high contrast, like you could say across the side of the neck, the cradle of the chin here, the sockets of the eyes, this like swoop of hair going down over the face. Knocking in stuff like that and getting that pinned down early is going to make a big difference for how well I can figure out where everything else is going on inside this thing. So, just finding a few of those key areas and sort of roughly laying them in. I'm doing it in a way that's loose at first because the thing I'm fighting against is that I don't have perfect vision of where everything is. Like, you'd think that just because I can look at this, I'd know where everything is, but it's all kind of soupy and relative. And when you go and try to do it yourself, you're going to find that it's a little bit difficult to kind of identify by sight alone, just where all the features fit together and, where they all are relative to each other. It's easy to get a bad version of it, but then if you try to like tighten it all down, it gets progressively stranger the more you sort of tighten the screws on the overall like appearance of the thing. So what I'm going to do first is I'm testing by looking back and forth really quickly between these two and building up my sense of being able to spot these kinds of differences, looking for areas where I've made tremendous mistakes first and get those corrected, and then slowly work my way down into tinier and tinier deviations between the two of them. A lot like the same way that AI starts with a blurry image and then progressively refines it and gets it to be more clarified over time. That's actually really similar to what an artist does, where the easiest way to build an image is not by, of course, not like a printer where you start at one end of the thing and progressively do it through scan lines, or even try to like, it is possible some artists will start in an area of, high detail, do every detail and sort of spiral their way out. But it is so much easier to work up through a hierarchy of shapes from big to small. And so I'm looking for where do I see the biggest shapes? Where do I see the biggest changes? And progressively making smaller and smaller corrections until we get something that looks like the original reference. This process of double checking it, like nobody actually needs a copy of this JPEG. Like there's more efficient ways to make a copy of a JPEG than to, over the course of 2 hours, systematically recreate it in Photoshop. But the reason why I'm doing it is because the process of recreating this image is forcing me to use a series of discrete artistic skills. And those skills are going to grow my ability to draw stuff out of my imagination, which is the thing that I really want to do. So this is like going into the gym and doing artistic push-ups. So you can see we've got this missing shadow underneath the nose. There's a little bit of ambiguity about where these nostrils are coming in. Can maybe start to define a little bit about what these eyes look like. Where are the eyes sitting in the head? Midjourney loves to make females really feminine. And one of the very feminine features is to have a very shallow chin. So we can see we're not getting a lot of light across the chin. That's true in our sample here, but we've got kind of an exaggerated version of it in this early work in progress here.
Yep.
You can see at first I'm working really high opacity, and creating these really solid value blocks. But then as I start to refine them down, I'm turning the opacity of my brush down a little bit. And this allows me to start like blending in some of these transitions. So if you see this like smooth transition going from the shadowed area to the lit area across the cheek, I can go and smear that up a little bit and create a softer transition. That's going to give me the sense of paintiness. While by contrast, you can see the cast shadows going across the eyes are much, much sharper. So we're going to make sure to like try to carve in and preserve some of that sharpness there. Spotting how like tight or loose a transition is a big part of like giving it that painty look. Like we can see that zooming in on the bridge of the nose here, we've got a really good example of different types of edges. You can see it's fairly tight running up across here. But then as we get up to the very top between the eyes, it starts to progressively soften. It doesn't soften all at once, but it starts to soften right here near the tear duct. And so we get this bit of softness as it starts to taper. And then when we see the transition from the shadow between the eyebrows up to the forehead, we can see it's a really, really smooth transition. And so that transition happens over a much longer distance. So this is happening over like a single pixel. This is happening over a few pixels. And then this is happening over like maybe an inch or so. And so the differences in the sizes of those transitions are going to give us some visual information about the overall, the way that the light is bouncing off the skin. And that's going to give us a sense on what the sort of three-dimensional shape of the person's face looks like. But for the purpose of being an artist, we don't, part of it is knowing what the anatomy and everything is, but another part of it is being able to look at the reference and look at it less as the subject and more as a pattern of light and dark, and be able to replicate those discrete patterns. So I'm just looking at the transitions in value or lightness and darkness around this area above the nose here, not anything else. You can see that the highlight spreads out in this big upside down teardrop shape here, with the kind of soft edge. And then it tightens down into a tighter highlight running down the front of the nose. Then it has this little break, and then we see another highlight on the tip of the nose. Being able to quickly spot these things and then reproduce them with like confident brush strokes allows me to really, really quickly reproduce an image like this. An artist who's even better at this skill set might be able to do a speed paint that is coming down to just a few minutes to be able to make something that feels like a really photo-like version of an image like this. While me, I'm a professional artist. This is maybe not the skill set I've practiced the most over the years. So I can do a pretty good study over the course of a couple hours, while it might take an amateur artist like the whole day to be able to reproduce something like this. So I'm like, 10 times faster than maybe the average amateur. And there's people who are 10 times faster than me because there's like a specific set of skills that they focus on. See, I'm just sort of at this time working straight down the face, down the center zone here, trying to get a rough version of all of these features. And I'm able to get the light and dark for my colors for my brush by either putting in black and white. I'm using the D key. I'm able to get the default colors, which is black foreground, white background. So I'm able to use D and X to like add in pure white and black. If I wanted to brighten something up past where it's already going, add a little white into it. But if I want to, I can also sample from the canvas any one of these colors that I'm already getting in order to do blending or to sort of transplant it over to another area. If I wanted to, like, borrow one of these gray tones that's already kind of emerging in the image. And like, I don't even think about it. I keep forgetting that people don't know this. Part of the reason I wanted to do the hand cam is so that people could see what buttons I was hitting. I'm probably going too fast for people to expressly like follow along with seeing what keys I'm hitting on the keyboard. But the part of the point of the hand cam is also just give a sense on like, to sort of show the whole process and give a sense that like, this is not an ultra complex thing that I'm doing here. It's just a matter of building up a little bit of muscle memory in order to pull it off. It's, not really exotic tools. A tablet like this that I'm using, this is a Intuos Pro. These run about $250, but you can get the off-brand XP Pen or Huion versions for about $50 off of Amazon. And they're super fun to own and not a huge financial investment. Like, it's not like buying, and they run on anything. You can hook one up to a laptop. Even if you've got a potato PC, like you would have no trouble being able to run the drivers for something like this. So I'm going to leave the eyes for a little later, but I do want to clean up the overall look of the face a little bit. I've been experimenting with trying to upgrade my technique by sort of spotting these little discrete areas and seeing what I can simplify to create a more efficient, more economical version of my painting technique. I want to be able to speed up the ability I can do a study like this, but the point in speeding it up is really to be able to reproduce these same kinds of effects, modeling the structure of a face or, create a sense of lighting in the most economical way possible so that when I'm painting from imagination, that I can do these kinds of things very smoothly and seamlessly without having to fight my medium a lot or waste a lot of time. I'm always amazed at how far the road of getting good at painting goes, because I've seen artists that can produce stuff that feels like finished professional grade work in minutes at times. Well, for me it always takes hours, even though I've been doing it for decades. So I think some of it comes down to practicing very subtle, discrete skills. I mostly focused my time on the more creative aspects of art rather than these kind of academic painting techniques. So that's, I've put my skill points in other places for the time being. And now I'm kind of circling back around on it later in my career because it's really, really fun to learn this stuff. And it's exciting to feel like I'm growing again as an artist. Even a couple of decades into my journey, I still feel like there's so much room that I have to be able to grow and advance. And it's an exciting feeling to feel like I'm getting better all the time as I do these kinds of studies. So you can see that the face is really coming together already as I've focused in on that. But I do want to get a broader sense of the structure for the rest of the body, so that it's not just a rendered face floating with a bunch of scribbles around it. So you can see I'm reproducing some of these shadow shapes here, bringing in some of these darker values. And whether I'm working with a photo or with an AI image, there's a lot of room for interpretation as far as what do I want the final image to look like? In a lot of cases, I'm aiming to try to do something interesting with the artistic style while I'm doing one of these studies, because it's good enough to make a perfect reproduction of an image doing a photo study, but it's more interesting to experiment with the possibilities of what happens when you play around with the values or the colors or subject matter. What kinds of interesting images can occur from experimenting with like different artistic techniques and tools and work methods. And so I'm doing like one or two of these a day, and I have been for every work day for the past like a couple of months. And it's been this amazing hotbed of like creative exploration for me. I'm finally giving myself permission to try out artistic techniques that I was previously like never using, or trying out new tools. And in a safe environment where like it doesn't matter whether or not I make a great image, I have this like ability to really experiment in a way that's like, I typically don't feel like I have available, because whenever I'm working on a painting, I want to make sure that that painting's really good and that people are going to like it and that it's consistent with my work. And I don't want to screw around with it and end up like with something that's going to get deleted, or just thrown into a folder somewhere, put off to the side indefinitely. So it can sometimes be a little bit restricting to feel like you need to produce a good painting. So in order to produce more interesting work, I need to make time for myself to produce bad paintings. I've started to really enjoy the idea of making bad paintings on purpose, like working in ways that I think are suboptimal, just to see like what the experience of it is like. There's no correct answer for how to make an image. Everybody's mind reproduces this stuff slightly differently. So it's really common for people to have very different experiences trying different working techniques. And it's really important, I think, for everyone to play around with it themselves and see what works for them. So let's see. What do I want here? I like the huge motion that's happening here. There's so much like dynamic activity happening as a result of the hair. I don't need to reproduce the hair perfectly as it is in this original image, but I do love this like sense of like dynamic motion. And I want to try to preserve that as much as possible. So I'm trying to figure out like, where are the important strands? Where are the important shapes? They're going to help preserve this. Because right now she's looking like, this is like glamorous kind of hair going everywhere. And this looks like, maybe meth head, hair going everywhere kind of look. Not the same kind of experience. So we're going to try to bridge that gap a little bit as we move forwards with this. Every time I do something like this, I'm always trying to find some sort of interesting gimmick, visual gimmick that I can uncover and reuse later. So at some point, I'm going to have to start to really deviate from the original structure of the image in order to find that gimmick that I want to make. And I'm getting close to the point where some choices are going to need to happen on that front. It's worth noting that I'm working in black and white here. There's going to be a point where I'm going to colorize this image and bring it into color. Part of the reason I'm able to talk so comfortably while I'm painting is because at the moment I'm only having to worry about one or two like aspects of this painting. Like I'm only having to think about these like, transitions of light and dark, the lengths of these kinds of transitions, and like how dark or light is the, a friend of mine was doing this thing where he had like reflective eyes on his study. I'm going to do that with this girl. It's a cool look. Cat eye look. When you're only having to like pay attention to one or two things about like the properties of the image, I think there's like still plenty of brain space for me to be able to like talk and consider what I'm doing. And like, I can hold whole conversations or hang out all day and paint just so long as I don't have to think too hard. And when I'm only having to worry about one or two aspects of the image, I really don't feel like I have to think too hard. It doesn't take up my whole brain to handle it. But I did this experiment, I think in yesterday's study, where I was trying to work entirely in color at first, and I was dying. I couldn't talk the whole time. It felt so bad. I was like normally able to like hold down conversations, but I was streaming and I was trying to speak and like the words couldn't come out. I felt like I had to stop. Like there was something about having to try to work out the values and the anatomy and everything inside the portrait, while also having to consider like the color, like the hue and the saturation of the marks I was making. That like altogether, it was like taking up 100% of my brain capacity and making it impossible to speak while I was painting. But if I just have to worry about black and white and then later just have to worry about color, I have a lot of extra brain capacity. And so I'll watch movies while I'm working. I'll listen to podcasts. I'll carry on conversations on Discord. And I find it, actually quite comfortable to have a little bit extra going on to keep me focused, because otherwise it can, long sessions, I can be painting for 3-4 hours at a time, or even full work days where I'm spending maybe 8 hours plus like at the desk working. It can get pretty boring sometimes, So I like to have a little something to make sure that my brain is being fully occupied. But now I know that I can occupy my whole brain by just trying to paint from scratch in color. It'll like completely take over. I'm just a few IQ points short of being able to carry out a conversation while painting in color, I guess. So speaking of conversation, I just thought I'd give a little bit of a tour on what my progress is on this, or like what I'm thinking about while I'm working on it and how I'm making it. But I'm available to answer questions while I'm working here. I'm going to keep pushing on this thing, and I'll point out anything if it seems really interesting. But also, feel free to raise your hand and ask any questions if there's something that you want to know, how I'm doing it, or like if you've been trying out painting on your own and you've got questions on like, how to do something artistically. Like I love answering beginner questions. There's no question too dumb when it comes to art for me to not enjoy answering it. So we're going to open up the floor. Feel free to use the raise your hand button. Ancient Chaos is going to be controlling the board and letting people on stage if they want to ask questions. You can ask me anything about art, and I love having a conversation while I'm working. So it's don't feel shy. It's always really nice when people come on stage and like chit chat with me a little bit while I'm up here demoing. This eye thing is looking a little weird. Let me simplify it down a little bit, maybe. I wonder if I'm going to have the lit eye. I wonder if I should have the overall eye be darker and then the eye itself be brighter than what's that, scleria or whatever behind it. Another very feminine facial trait is this bulge behind the arch of the eyebrow, this here. If you want to make someone look more masculine, you make sure that every area underneath the eyebrow is shadowed. Well, if you want to make them look more feminine, you add a little bit of a highlight to the bulge over the back of the eye here. There's a lot of times women will actually paint an outline shadow here around the shape of the eye, and maybe even paint in some lighter paint right here in order to exaggerate this natural form to exaggerate the shape of their face. It's like one of the things you learn from painting is you realize that a bunch of the forms that are occur that like people find desirable in faces, that like the whole point of makeup is to kind of like paint that on there, kind of like the way that miniature painters, paint like on extra highlights and shadows to try to like create effects on their sculptures. The same thing is true of makeup, that it's like largely there to kind of create a kind of artificial sculptural lighting to reshape the face. So no takers on the raising hands today. I guess me being late is points against me today. I'm sorry about that. I'll be on time next week. Good thing I'm good at rambling today. Let's see. I wonder if part of the eye problem is that I wasn't getting the spacing quite right. Looking a little either cross-eyed or wall-eyed. Let me get the eyes painted in correct, and then I think I'll stylize them a little bit. Not getting so much shading under here. One of the key things to recognize about the difference between an area that's in light versus shadow is that lit areas tend to have a lot of curvature. You can see that like here across the forehead as we go from like where the highlight is hitting across the length of the forehead, you can see how it is, the light is like slowly transitioning. That is a sign that there is like a light, the light hitting isn't just that it's getting brighter at the top, but that there's a change that's happening over a distance. This is an indication that there is there's a light hitting a curved surface, that the part where it's hitting most directly is here. And then as we move away from like the center point of contact, we get fewer and fewer photons bouncing back towards the viewer because the light's hitting at more of a glancing angle, and fewer photons are either bouncing back towards the viewer or making contact at all. And so the contrast is in shadowed areas, things tend to be a lot flatter. There is a certain amount that you can still see because there is light bouncing around inside space, but the shadowed areas tend to be more flatter, deep. That will look fairly natural. That is shadow. Okay. These shadow areas that blend together and have no edge them at all, but it's called lost edges. Lost edges. These look artistic and cool, which is why every once in a while one out to me and they say, "Hey Bob, there's no edge." I'm like, yeah, I know. All art. The Instagram. And one file and the other, and then looking at the navigator here. Having that really far away view on the navigator gives me a lot of insight. So I can start to push around the features a little bit. It looks like the head as a whole is just a little bit up and to the right. Well, the shoulder's a little low. So we can either lasso this up, move it like that, or we can repaint it. Let's see. All right, now we're a little bit closer. It looks like proportionally, I wasn't that far off. I'm feeling pretty good about it. We did zoom in pretty close to do some of this stuff, work with the nose early on, which is helping. The value structure, it's a little exaggerated. The areas, the midtones I have here are all a little darker than the midtones in this face. So it's exaggerating the sculpting on the face a little bit. But I'm more worried about things like placing the features. It seems like the point at the bottom of the eye socket has kind of moved inwards a little bit, which is reshaping the face a bit and making, I think, the largest difference between the two. So let's push this over here a little bit.
No.
Can also see there's a kind of soft transition at the edge of the shadow. Even if you have it fairly flat, one of the nice cheats you can do is you can add a little bit of a soft gradient into it, give it some a nice sense of transition, even if it's not doing it, not up to a whole lot, even if it's relatively flat. R. Hello.
Hello.
Yes, hello.
Yes, yes, yes. I'm not English, so I try to speak your language. Can you draw my a picture after?
Oh, draw on your picture?
Yes, of my profile of Instagram.
I'm not doing any requests right now. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay, okay.
Do you have any questions for me?
Are you a teacher of draw? I don't know how to say that. Do
I'm
you
sorry.
teach,
I'm
okay, okay. Do you teach the draw?
I'm about to. I'm building a school called Huckleberry Art Academy. The website is going to be at huckleberry.art.
Yes.
And
So,
I'm going to be uploading some videos on how to draw.
okay, okay. What is the mission of your school? Because
I want to make I want to make it easy for people to get in and try art if they haven't done it before.
okay, okay. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. All right, it's people coming on stage. That's nice. Yeah, anybody who wants to chit chat, feel free to raise your hand. I'm available.
Hello.
Aria,
I was
hello.
actually half expecting Cable to be here, someone else usual.
I know. How's it going?
It's been going pretty well. You were asking about some chit chat, and I've actually come across something over the weekend that is very interesting
What do you got?
concerning a recent like AI art bit controversy. No, it's a bit.
I have a guess, and I have takes.
Okay, so if my guess is correct, you've heard of the recent Wizards of the Coast AI art debacle for one of the
Yes.
newest books. Yep.
That's what I thought you were going to bring up. Yes.
Yeah. So I want to
Big beat.
I want to hear your opinion on like the use of AI art. How liberal can you be within how like strictly no AI art like should something like that be? Like, is it really good to be using for a reference, like you're using right now, or could you use a bit of the AI art and then interact with it in a way where it is, I would say, acceptable to be put on something like that in official capacity?
Sure. Yeah. So here's my take. So prepare your screen capture so you can use it as a some sort of what do you call it? It's ransom later, so I can ransom you. Like, so okay. One of the things that I think there's a few things I think people don't appreciate about this situation. Number one is that the time that it takes for one of these books to come out is like decently long. So the art that was being done for the Big Beat book was being worked on like over a year ago. And over a year ago, like there was no AI art controversy. Like I was working with AI at the time. I was working with Disco Diffusion was kind of like the hot one. It looks like the guy, I don't know for sure, but it looked like really similar to the results I was getting out of Disco as well. So I wouldn't be surprised if it looked like what he said he was doing was that he was giving a work in progress over to an AI to help finish it. Or let's say add rendering to like a flatter, sketchier work in progress. This is a process that I have also experimented with. And I was doing the same thing with the same tools about the same time, which was like a little over a year ago. So I saw that and I went like, oh yeah, I've done that too. And so like at the time I was doing it, I remember telling friends like, hey, have you seen this cool thing? I'm amazed that this thing is really cool. It's really exciting. And I'm kind of amazed that there's no controversy, because it's like, it's kind of strange, and people are like, yeah, no, I've seen a little bit about it. It's really cool. Yeah, it's funny. There's no controversy, right? Like him at the time doing this was totally uncontroversial. And none of the art directors at Wizards of the Coast who are like, interested in other stuff were likely messing around with Disco Diffusion or had any opinions about AI art, because it wasn't in the news. And there wasn't like large claims of like copyright, like what's copyrightable and like, is it using copyrighted material for training data?
Yeah.
None of that was around. So
Like
trying to hold that art to that standard is a little strange. I've heard through a friend that the art director who art directed that book is vehemently anti-AI, even for use as a reference, which I think is a little bit of a overkill on a take. But it's like, I think if anybody's going to be vehemently, like, it wasn't just the art director that had contact with this thing. Like, these kinds of books touch a lot of hands. And like, this thing's been in production for a long time. And there's been a lot of opportunities for people who work at Wizards of the Coast, who work in like fantasy art every single day, who see tons of shit, who are super tuned in, to have seen this work and speak to it in some capacity. It's shocking to me that like, they all managed to miss the fact that this very obviously AI looking work like was going in this book, and that they were making promotional materials for the book, like with these images, and no one ever said anything. And so I'm like, the artist seemed to be fairly transparent about his working methods and his intent. And it was like strange to me that the company like never seemed to acknowledge their own failings, and like wanting to not use AI, but also not be able to recognize AI. That like, it wasn't just one guy. It was like the entire staff that touches these books that completely failed to recognize these extremely obvious and early use of AI. It's really, I find it to be like odd that the ire is coming down on the artist who is doing something that was completely normal at the time he did it. And there's very little criticism overall against the people who work at the company who hold these standards, but apparently aren't paying enough attention to like actually like enforce the standards, without the community popping up and like saying something. I think that like, if people are going to have an anti-AI stance, they should know what AI looks like. I see so many false positives, people saying that something's AI when it's not, and false negatives when like, people who are super anti-AI are either praising it on social media or including it inside publications. This feels like it's a really common occurrence these days for someone who's anti-AI to just, or like, say they're working on a project that has no AI in it, to like completely whiff on identifying something that is obvious to everyone else as AI. I've often thought that I should figure out a way to market a service where I just tell art directors whether or not things are AI. Because like the like machines that are supposed to be able to do it are not that good at it. So yeah, that's the bulk of my take. Is like, I think that one of the other things I think is like, looking at those paintings, I remember from my own experience around that time thinking that like, this sort of weird, wormy, like strange look that like, a malfunctioning AI gives was at the time very novel and interesting in its texture. And now, after like a year of seeing a ton of it, we're all kind of like, a lot of people are over it. And so like, they see that sort of texture being added into work and they're just like, that's low effort. So it's gone from like, over the course of a year, gone from like a sign of like novelty and interest to like appearing to be like low effort and low quality as a result. And And it's just like, I think that if someone's going to use AI as part of their process, and I can tell you there are plenty of working illustrators, working for wizards that have experience working with AI the way that this guy did, who are probably going to keep doing it, but they're probably just going to be better at like cleaning up the tool marks. Like, I think a really good illustrator could, whether they're using AI as a reference or like handing it to doing image to image and then like painting over it, like between better and or two was to train custom models off of the work that's being delivered to them by their artists in order to replace them. And that the only really that is going to be through like an or for reading books in somebody like popped up and said, wow, this sure looks like AI. Can we double check with that guy to see? Because the artist would have told them if they asked him. It seems like he was like very open about his process. And like, he's totally aware of this controversy. If they were to ask him, I'm sure he would have told them. So that it tells me that they never asked. And like, it likely was done prior to them ever including anything in any contracts or even saying anything privately to tell people to not use AI. So it's like he wasn't betraying their trust in any way. And I think that's the reason they didn't throw him under the bus. At the end, they said, we talked to him, but they didn't say he lied to us and we fired him, which I'm sure that didn't happen. I think they're probably still working together, though, like, with a clearer understanding of where these boundaries are.
I think that a controversy like this will probably like pop up every once in a while because now that AI, like you said, is becoming like more common, but some people probably don't expect it to be in their immediate space as often as it is portrayed to be. So when people have a really hard time to distinguish AI from like a hand-drawn piece, I kind of understand that, because for the people who are not that deep into art, you don't scrutinize everything that you see. You just
But the
appreciate
mistakes
art.
aren't being made by viewers.
Yeah.
The mistakes are being made by the art directors who their job is looking at art.
Yeah, I understand that as well, and it's kind of weird because this has happened. It has been brought to public attention, and if it keeps happening over and over again, that's when people are going to be like blowing it up and layering more and more and more on top of that.
Because I'm thinking about like the Clark's World cover controversy, and I'm like, this guy, his old thing is like sci-fi and fantasy, like art and writing, and he ended up licensing an image that looked super AI, even though he had made a very, very clear stance against AI submissions, and it almost seemed like it was an AI artist that was making a protest piece, And I'm like, you didn't spot that? Like, it had all these hallmarks. It was not subtle, and yet, they had to like make a big retraction and like they had to tiptoe around it. I'm like, this is ridiculous. Like, you should know these things, and if you can't tell the difference, you should be talking to people who do. Like, call me up. There's an open invite. If anybody is in a position where it would be embarrassing for them to be caught with AI art included in their products, I will let you hire me to look at your art and tell you my professional opinion about whether or not I think it's AI. Because like, this is something people are asking of me all the time. They look at this. Do you think this is AI or not? Well, I'm pretty good at spotting them because I'm pretty familiar with AI work. Like, I'm neutral on technology. So I see a lot of it and I know what it looks like. I could spot it better than the average art director who is mega anti-AI and like doesn't and for that reason refuses to look at it and therefore doesn't know what it looks like. If if you're going to have an anti-AI stance, you need to be fully informed on like what that means, like what that entails. I don't think I don't think that should be controversial, but I think like people are treating AI art like it's child pornography in some circles, and that like even like seeing it is a bit of a crime. And that to me seems like a kind of like an exaggerated perspective. I don't think it's that controversial, but I mean, obviously in this space, you know, and no one here is likely to hold an opinion like that. But it's the degree to which people are in some cases extremely negative about it cannot be overstated. What are your thoughts? I mean, what like do you think there's anything that's going to happen as a result of this mishap?
I do believe that because this has blown up into the public space, other companies, not even like Wizards of the Coast especially, are probably going to look at this and now be on like this weird paranoid watch mode for any of their own artists that might be using AI for reference, but not entirely using the actual art produced by AI. They're just going to look at that and be like, we don't want to end up like those guys. We got to like snip this right away, even though it's like totally unrelated. It's something that happens very, very often, and kind of almost ridiculous in a sense how it could be blown up. But yeah, this was wow.
This is the first one of those where it hit a major brand that was taking like an outward anti-AI stance, and yet they published AI art anyway because, you know, the artist was using it as a tool. I mean, it wasn't that like the art was being done by a bot. It was being done with the assistance of an AI image generator, like, you know, to make revisions, to make like alterations to like a human-made painting. That's the future. If I think there's a future to AI art, you know, in professional spaces, that's it. Like, this is just a super like amateurish example of it. I saw that thing and I'm like, man, this looks bad. Like, the AI didn't do a good job with a lot of parts of it. And then the artist should have done better, like building on top of it.
Like the AI knew how to replicate a certain style that the artist was going for, hence why the artist must have trained the AI to like replicate this kind of style to a degree. But you're kind of right, is that they were almost lazy with how they were going to touch up and paint over certain bits of it to the point where it kind of like slipped in and people were like ready to jump them when they see those mistakes.
I didn't think they did any kind of job trying to like hide it. It seemed to me like he was actually like, because I'm telling you, I had the same reaction when AI was early on and it did like these crazy things that looked super wrong. There was nothing else that looked like it at the time. So it was like you would see it make these insane choices. You go, oh, I should keep that. I should preserve that because, you know, that's adding novelty. It's adding interest to the work because nothing looks like this. You know, no one had ever seen anything like it. When I was posting stuff that looked like that on Twitter, like it was blowing up. I was getting like 50,000 likes on Twitter. It was like a cheat code that gave me like instant audience reaction. It was like people loved it. So like now everyone's like, oh, it's so gross looking. Why would anyone ever do this? I'm like, because it was hot for a minute. Like it was the first time we'd ever seen it. And it was cool just to like, it was cool even when it was bad. And it was like really blowing up. Like everywhere that I saw it as somebody posting it, they were getting tremendous reactions. Huge feedback on social media, like massively being massively rewarded by the community for using tools in this way. Like, of course, people are going to play around with it. Like, it was being celebrated.
Wow.
So yeah, now it's like, now it comes out and people are like, who would ever make shitty art like this? It's like, I don't know, people who want to make cool, interesting stuff that's never been seen before.
People who want to have like some awesome portrait and stuff that they probably, are going to be using for quite a while.
Yeah, so it's I don't think it's going to be it's one of those things like when next time Wizards of the Coast has had all these gaffes recently, and I think that like Wizards of the Coast is going to continue to have weird gaffes, and they're just going to keep listing them. Like whenever this happens with like controversial figures online, whenever the new thing comes up, they list all the old stuff. So they're going to be like, it's going to be the same company brought you the OGL, and AI artwork is now trying to like steal your toenail clippings. Like, it's like this is going to be held up as an example of why they're bad for some other reason, like 6 months down the line. But it's going to be going to be criticism made by like jerks on the internet acting in bad faith. But it's still going to be frustrating to them and internally and like to their employees and stuff, because they're not going to hear the end of it for a long, long time. Not unless there's like a major cultural shift, which I don't see happening in the immediate future. But yeah, I know of an artist that did an AI assisted work for Wizards of the Coast like years ago, way before anyone even knew about these tools. And they're just like, yeah, I'm just not going to tell anybody. Like, fuck them. Like, there's no point. Like, there's no conversation to be had. There's no point in turning this into drama. I'm just going to like bury it. And like, they made history, but they like, they're never going to take credit for that history, which is a little sad, I think. Like, instead of celebrating advancements in like art making technology, we're treating them like a sin, which to me, super bizarre. And there's no wrong way to make art. People just want to make cool pictures. I like that.
Thank you very much for your input on this one. But I do believe that I might be taking up the stage for quite a while.
Well, thanks for coming on.
Yeah, you're welcome. And also thank you very much for having me. I'm just going to be ceding the stage to another person.
All right, great. All right, I think I'm done with the values on this. I'm going to start adding some color. Look at this. Oh, you know what else I can do? I got some ideas. I've been treating a lot of these references pretty literally in a lot of cases. The thing I haven't been doing is like messing with the lighting at all. I think I should probably do something like this where I like mess with the
Hi, Pizza.
Hi there, how's it going?
Good. I've been watching your Angelarium work for a while. Really like it, man. And I just wanted to ask, quite a few people have been telling me that I should, get into more art, do some more drawings, paintings, animation. So I just wanted to know, like, in particular with your Angelarium, how did that start? What was the inspiration? Like,
oh yeah,
what should I take on? Yeah.
I mean, for me, I'd start doing angels because I just thought the names were cool.
Yeah.
It was like I had this idea of, I tried to draw all kinds of things while I was in college, and then I had a friend who had this like dictionary of angel names, and when I read it, I was like, oh, these are great ideas for characters, and it just clicked for me. So it wasn't really a matter of me having like a big plan in my head in advance. It was really more of a matter of like, I just sort of like fell in love with a thing when I stumbled across it. Everybody I know who's kind of got their own thing in art, it's not something that they have planned out ahead. It really is just a matter of them kind of stumbling into a thing that they enjoy, and they keep wanting to do it over and over again. And over the course of like, their time they spend with it, it becomes like a recognizable kind of calling card. And so if you wanted to do, your own thing, like you can really just pick whatever you like and whatever seems nice to you. And that's good enough. That's a good enough of a reason to start making it as like an art series. Is there something that you had in mind that you wanted to be making?
Yeah. So like something themed around owls. I've been really into owls recently, looking up a lot of the folklore behind them, how they've been used in culture. And I'm in a group that's named OwlSec, and it's just, been lining up to start drawing, and then all the ideas, because I have lots of ideas. I've done more writing than drawing, and it never occurred to me to do art, but having joined that community and gotten all the advice to take on doing something creative, I'm just left with, what do I choose? Where do I start? That kind of stuff.
I found that when it comes to creating artistic identity, it often becomes more of a process of editing than creating. Like, you end up making a lot of stuff. Like when you go and start like, producing artwork, you try on different ideas, you explore a lot of different creative possibilities. And then, at some point you've got a big pile of all kinds of different things. Everyone always tells me like, I don't know what to choose. I don't know what my things should be. I like so many different things. Like it often comes back to like editing. Like you just look at all the different kinds of things that you've been making, and you pick one of them, and you you just kind of edit out the rest. So I wouldn't worry too much about like whether or like, because when you pick a thing, you say like, oh, it's owls, I'm going to make it owls. Like, there's this pressure, like I need to make the really, really good owls. And I need to like make sure that the, every one of these paintings is going to be like really good. And these ideas need to be strong. And like that pressure really can hurt the creative process a lot. So it's like, I would say just like, try it out, see if you like it. And then if it ends up not being the thing that like holds your attention long term, that's fine too. Like you just should keep trying stuff as it becomes interesting and then see where it leads you. Everyone I know who has a thing, they've stumbled into it. It could be that there's something else that you have counted because you just didn't think it was interesting enough, or that, it wasn't something other people were into. And that could be the thing that becomes like your artistic identity. You don't get to pick, like it kind of picks you. So give the owl thing a try, and then don't put too much pressure on yourself to make sure that that's the thing.
Yeah. I have been told before just to keep doodling, and whatever, catches me, just go with it. So that does help.
I wish there was a more complex version of the process. I wish there was like a more prescriptive, like in set of instructions I could give you to like tell you exactly what to do with it. But that's just not the way that art works, unfortunately. It's just art is often just an expression of our interests and who we are. And, there's so much about ourselves that we don't get to pick. And so, creative inspiration is just one of those things.
That just makes a whole lot of sense, man. Thanks for that. It really does. I'll just keep doing whatever comes to my mind. I spend a lot of time, not so much doing things, but exercising ideation, coming up with ideas and stuff like that, because I did writing. So I feel like that's a good angle to take with what you're saying, and just, I don't know, open up paint and start scribbling and see where it goes. Look for different tools.
Yeah, try out different things, and then, don't worry about editing the ideas in your mind. Don't worry about like how things look to you in your imagination, or like the ideas, things that you're going to be building in the future. Like, just look at what's actually on the page. The stuff that's happening on the page, that's the real stuff. And so, if you are looking down at the page and saying, wow, I could really go for 10 times more of this, then try to make 10 times more of it. And if you are looking at it and you're like, I don't really like this, but it will be great someday. I mean, fine, like, but I think you should just keep experimenting until you see what you want to see and like see what people are reacting to, like actually on the page that you're working on, rather than like in some vision that you have for like a future self that's never going to arrive. You know, it's like there's a certain amount of this that comes back to this, you know, idea of acceptance, accepting who we are and what we really like, and you know what we really want, which is it's a difficult lifelong process. So it's you know, that's why I say, like, you know, don't sweat it. It's a long journey to figure all this out.
Yeah, thanks. I'll definitely be looking out for your academy, and I'm really glad I found this server. It's been really helpful with just, you know, picking up small little things to add to what I'm doing to make it work, or make it work for me.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, thanks for that.
Great. I'm glad it's helpful.
Yeah, man. All right, I'll pop down, let someone else come up.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thanks again. No problem, man.
Yeah, everyone I've ever met is always a little worried about their creative voice. You know, we want to be impressive to other people, and we want to have good ideas, and we don't want to be wasting our time or feel like we're lost. But so much of, you know, being a person is feeling those ways. So it's really, really common that people feel kind of like lost and you know, without direction, and you know, wanting to find something that's going to help make the process of being an artist or being a person just a little bit simpler. But it's tough. It's a tough situation. You know, we don't get to pick a lot about ourselves, and one of them is our sense of taste or our creative voice. You know, and so like a lot of people ask me about, you know, how I found my thing, and it was really just like it just kind of found me, and I just said, I didn't say no to it.
Okay.
Right. So I've got this gradient map here. This is one of my favorite ones because it does this thing where it makes like parts of the shadows like bluish and parts of it orangish. I think it adds a lot of like volume and dimension, you know, without doing too much. And then that can be good sometimes to layer something else on top of it to help establish a color palette, mess with the values. Yeah, I like this one a lot too. It like flattens out the midtones a little bit. Sort of, I was overly sculpting the face, and now it's kind of flattening it back out, giving it a little bit more, bringing out the highlights and the deep shadows. I wonder if there's any other really good ones we got going on here. I like playing with the crazy ones sometimes too. Really? Oh, this is kind of interesting. Look at this. Looking a little bit like a 1970s band poster. Oh, this one's really intense. Oh, this is cool. Yeah, all three of them together is kind of building to make this interesting look. Now let's add some local colors. Those are like, the actual color of the thing. So, we add a little pink to the lips, maybe a little bit of orangey pink to the some of the skin tones here. We're not going to be particularly precise about it. The plan is to try to get colors into the right zones, but not necessarily be like trying to colorize it in a precise way. The plan is to get it to get a series of interesting colors in that space so that I can so I can carefully place them as like a step as part of my process of adding detail at the very end. Ooh, look at that. That's cool. I always like when these colors kind of are in a color palette together. I like the blue cast shadows that I'm getting in that one part of the neck. So I might see if I can carry that up into some other spots to like extend this color palette a bit. There we go. Deviating from the anatomy a little bit on the shoulder because I think this is probably, my version's probably a little bit more accurate than what the AI is giving me. Yeah. What's producing this red here? I want a few hits of it around. little notes of it to spark some interest. But I like this blue that's moving around through the canvas here. So I want to, bring out these cast shadows by giving them this really blue this blue cast. And got this very vampire looking lady now, going big time vampire. If anybody, we've got about 20 minutes left today. If anybody wants to come on stage and chit chat about anything, ask me any questions about what I'm up to, or art wise, or even rewind to an earlier stage to ask how I got here, I am open and available for anybody who's got something. All-time classic Gallifrey. How's it going? Oh, I'm going to turn you up a little bit.
I have a terrible headset. New one's coming
All
next
good.
week. I was curious about what is next for you.
What's next for me? Well, I've got too much on my plate. I got the tarot deck is running a little bit behind schedule. The RPG is running way more behind schedule. The art school is really behind schedule. And between those three things, I feel like I'm kind of overloaded at the moment. And I'm streaming every day for about 2 hours on twitch.tv, which you've seen.
I've seen, yeah.
So between all that, it's way too much. So what's next for me is, I don't know. I think I'm about fine art stuff more and more as time goes on. I always say that. I'm thinking about what's my big fine art turn going to be after I'm done with all the Angelarium books and everything.
Yeah. And not to mention you have like a family and a home to take care of, and all of
Oh my God. Every time I bump into something in this house, it costs me $1,000. We had broken faucets. Now we got broken dishwasher, and so we got plumbers and appliance guys coming in, and it's all $1,000 bills as far as the eye can see. It's crazy.
Yeah, somewhere in my brain, I'm always thinking, I could live in one of those little tiny houses.
Right.
And I look around at the amount of crap here, and I don't think I could squeeze it all in there.
I think if it was just me and the wife, we might be able to pull it off. But with kids, I'm not gonna. The people who do the tiny house thing with the kids are crazy. I don't relate to them at all.
Or if they're not now, they will be soon.
I mean, they might they might actually be crazy. They might have something. They might be fully certifiable. I wouldn't know. I guess I don't know any people that do that. But yeah, maybe they're not crazy, but I can definitely say I don't relate to their situation.
Yeah. Oh, I love those colors around your eyes.
Thank you. Yeah, as I've been kind of smearing around the reds and the blues, like in various different spots, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to kind of run a prism over this. This is like all white, right? And so I'm trying to divide it down into different like warm and cool zones and exaggerate the more extreme colors, which still reads as white-ish overall at a distance, but in a kind of rainbowy prismatic sort of way, which is always very fun.
Yeah, I'm a fan. Well, you said you were willing to talk about how you started. So
yeah,
you've mentioned your art school before.
My very bad art school.
Yeah, is that where it started?
No, I mean, it started in high school. I woke up one day, big anime fan, and I wanted to draw anime fan art. So I went and I dug around in my parents' house for the art supplies that were kind of gathering dust. And I started trying to figure out how to draw with colored pencils and markers and whatever we had. And, it wasn't long before I started looking on the internet to see, what was the cool art out there and how were people learning to make it. And that led me to, various different art forums and educational books. And it didn't take terribly long for it to basically take over my whole identity. Because it was like, it was a reason to get up in the morning. It was praise from my peers and my friends. It was like I got special attention from like teachers at school where they gave me like special lunch breaks where I go work on art projects during lunch instead of being like depressed and eating lunch alone, which is how I had a lot of high school. So it's like it was this path towards everything I wanted in my life, and so like I just like let it absorb everything, and I've never regretted that one bit. It was great. I got everything I wanted out of it. Art has been a wonderful gift for me.
Were you a D&D player when you were a kid?
There was a point where I had a group of friends. It was like sort of, I think it was in college at the time, but I knew some people, and we had a D&D session that was in the back of the local game store. So everyone would meet up at the game store on like Wednesday nights, and there was like a room in the back that had a little closing door and a game table. We had a standing engagement on Wednesday nights to go in there and do Dungeons and Dragons. And I spent a lot of the time while we were at the table either doodling art, like getting sketches done, because I wasn't really into whatever politicking stuff the DM had running. But I was really into the art of D&D, and I was really enjoying like a lot of the art in the books. And I mean, that was a huge highlight for me, was getting to see people like just like poring over paintings of people like John Foster, who now like lives down the street from me. Like I've met him and stuff. Like I don't know how they got some of those guys. Some of the people they had in like 3.5 are just like total masters, and the work that they had done back then was absolutely fantastic. And none of it paid anything. It was like they were just giving it away to be in these books. I'm so glad that they did in some respects, because then I got to enjoy it as a teenager, as a young person.
Were you able to catch any of Victor Gnarly's presentation on Friday?
No, I missed it.
It was awesome. He was talking about his method for character continuity using Midjourney. And it was just the question you had earlier about, that and sort of went down the artist versus AI path. I just really appreciate when, people who are in the field see it for what it is and what it's going to be. And if people can,
it's early right now.
Right.
I mean, it's super early right now.
And
it has the potential to be something. Yeah, it has the potential to be misused by bad actors, as most tools are, And so I'm more worried about the people than I am about the tools. I really think that if, and it's not the artist making art wrong that I think anyone should ever be worried about. I really think, we have to keep our eye on corporations and on contracts and like the ways that people who employ artists to make sure that like, this stuff is not being abused in a way that like, hurts people's livelihood and like hurts the industry. Because, we like things like D&D. We want to see them thrive, and we want to see the culture inside them thrive. And that's not going to happen when some boss over at Wizards of the Coast decides that the profits for the books are more important, and tries to, cut out all the creative people in favor of cutting corners. Like, that's the real risk that we have ahead of us. It's like the artists themselves are always going to work to try to make the best work they possibly can, because they care deeply about the work that they make and the products that they work on, especially for something like Dungeons and Dragons. Like the idea that that's under assault, I think, is silly, because I think it would require artists to be very motivated by very, very different things in order for that to ever change.
I think it's a shallow way of thinking too, flat, because, me personally, I've added it to my workflow. My workflow was, I didn't even do anything for a year because I was so depressed when I got diagnosed with the essential tremor in my hands. Mm-hmm. It has taken, Photoshop sort of helps with a lot of that, but it has taken days off of my what was getting continually longer and longer and longer workflow.
Yeah.
And so I'm extremely appreciative of it. So there's always something in my head saying, you know, people that are anti this and that, you know, it feels a little bit ableist to me and a little bit gatekeepy. But I do understand definitely that the bad actors are the scary part of that. Government's not
Yeah.
quick with any regulation or anything, though.
The thing that it scares me most is it feels like people aren't curious about who the bad actors are. They just see AI and they hear and they say bad, and that's the conversation. And it needs to be more nuanced than that if we're going to, go into the future. Because we're going to be there. We're going to go into the future one way or the other, and we need to understand what we're working with here and the kinds of things, the kinds of ways this could go poorly. And people are worried that the real problem is that the giant's hand anatomy was bad. I'm like, I don't know. I don't think that we're at any risk of societal major collapse in this space because somebody drew a bad hand on a giant. There's bigger fish to fry here for sure.
I did clock that hand instantly though when I saw it.
Oh, I bet you could have probably seen this and gone oh, okay, yeah, the weird hand poses. I can see this texture on this part of the weapon, and it's if you've been around it, you spot the stuff instantly, and you're like, yeah. That's what happens when you're not paying attention. If you're not running the machine well, and if you're not, editing well, this is what you're going to end up with. But yeah, maybe you could art direct over Wizards of the Coast and help them with it, because I don't think they're going to hire me to consult for them.
I don't think they want to hear what I have to say either. the other on the not always, some art side, but on the AI in general side, a lot of teachers and professors are kind of freaking out about it too. But
yeah,
the first thing I heard as an educator was, oh my gosh, it's going to open so many doors for so many different kinds of children. That's all I could think of across. If we could get it into the schools, it would, blow away economic barriers and, ability barriers and all sorts of things. That's. I guess I have maybe a rose-colored glass view.
I don't really. I had this really at first when AI started to blow up earlier this year, I was like, oh my God, this thing's progressing so fast. It's going to be out of control soon. And then it felt like it slowed down a lot. And I wonder now with language-based AI, how much we quickly ran into a wall that is not necessarily a problem with training data. That is just maybe a limitation of what this technology can do. Because I really do think that there's a possibility that there's kind of a speed of sound barrier for AI that we're approaching. That it's just it's very difficult to make AI more reliable. It's getting factual information. I mean, I thought at first it was just going to be about tool use, but I feel like we should have been able to solve that problem by now. But we still have really big problems with AI just being bad at facts.
Yeah.
And
wasn't it ChatGPT that not only was it providing bad facts, it was really confidently providing sources that also didn't exist.
Right. Yeah. It's okay, and cite your sources. And you look at it as somebody who doesn't know, who's not a subject matter expert. You look at this and go wow, this is the future. This thing knows everything. And then over time, we've sort of been oh, I wouldn't trust it to create a bibliography for me. It maybe it doesn't have such a specific grasp on a lot of things that it seemed like it did at first, just because we kind of took it at its word. And now we're all a little bit more skeptical because we've had a little to it. And the OpenAI people are like, listen, it's not getting dumber. You guys are just getting more sensitive to the things it's bad at. And I'm like, that's interesting. It's an interesting thought.
Well, and I have yet to read something out of it that I haven't thought, how do students think this would pass as a paper, but
yeah,
I guess they had to try. We always,
if you've got a professor that's accusing the whole class of using ChatGPT, you get a new professor. Like it feels like, like I was saying, that art directors at Wizards of the Coast should be able to identify the difference between a AI painting and a handmade one. English professors should be able to spot the difference between a ChatGPT written English paper and a student made one. I think there's probably a line that's sometimes hard to guess, but honestly, I think, if a student's being really lazy about it, really trying to cheat, it shouldn't be that tough to spot. Yeah.
Back in the day, it wasn't AI, it was just the internet. When Wikipedia, I am guilty of banning Wikipedia as an allowable source. But over the years, I now allow it as, maybe not secondary, but a tertiary source, as long as they have first sources available to them, that are a little better moderated, I guess. But Wikipedia's gotten better. But, usually we worry about plagiarism and things like that. And
we were worried about the total collapse of all knowledge work happening in short order, but maybe the human brain is maybe as miraculous as we think it is, and maybe it's people really do add value to an organization, and there isn't an imminent collapse takeover of this, and some of it might be just corporations trying to puff themselves up by over exaggerating the how good their tools are at this kind of stuff.
Yeah,
it's all still very interesting, but I don't trust the outputs of an AI enough to ask it for directions and then follow them.
I did get a really good collaboration with ChatGPT for the new scalloped potato recipe.
Yeah, I'd be curious to but I feel like you'd have to really know your way around. If you didn't know how to cook, I wouldn't ever trust a recipe that ChatGPT gave you. I think maybe it's possible for someone to make a specialized cooking AI, and then it for somebody who is already knew their way around the kitchen a little bit, could have a conversation with it to sort of workshop recipe ideas. But it would have to be much more specialized. I don't think these generalized models are the beginning and end of the conversation. No. I really think that I've been saying since the early days of Midjourney that the ideal Midjourney is a number of different bots that you could invoke separately, kind of the way that we have right now. Niji as being its own separate model.
Right.
I think that subdivision of AIs is likely going to happen across all genres of AI. And I think general language models are fine for something like customer service maybe, but having the same model try to do physics and cooking, it seems, it's an interesting aspiration, but I don't think it's clearly not general artificial intelligence. And if I get a scalloped potato recipe, I'll see what ChatGPT has to say. I was at the grocery store and I asked it, hey, what's the difference between whipping cream and heavy whipping cream? And it gave me a coherent answer, and it was so low stakes. It's who cares? Let's just trust it.
Right. Yeah. Well, I think that you're right. Eventually, there's going to be just a bunch of specialized AIs, but there are always going to be people on the other side of them, and there's just going to have to be a hopefully slow shift toward like everybody that's upset about losing fossil fuels, that people are all
or gas stoves,
scared. Right. Oh yeah. Well, those are
or
really
incandescent light bulb.
yes. But actually, you know, if the job market gets away from that and puts these people, hopefully, if there should be systems in place to train people. But I see that happening in the art world with AI as well. Like, I don't think it's ever going to be without an art director in a major corporation. And if it is, there's stuff.
Imagine this. It's like you're like, oh well, why do we need an art department for if we've got Midjourney? Well, okay, is the CEO now going to be the art director and have to go and like sit down and task the bot to like, you know, make all the creative choices? Like this idea that like we're going to be replaced by robots. It's like somebody needs to actually man the thing. And I can tell you as a matter of fact that like a lot of the people who currently benefit from like the upper positions in companies, they don't really want another job.
Yeah.
And so I don't see them, you know, sacrificing their own spare time to try to like, you know, take on another job as also being the art director in an entire art department or whatever. I think for indie indie like studios and stuff, you know, maybe you could slim down the number of like contractors you need to hire or something. But
I think eventually maybe this slight lull that we seem to be experiencing in the barreling forward with it will give people some time to breathe, you know, and stop panicking so they can less emotionally evaluate what's happening.
I hope so. I want people to stop like having a panic attack. I want them to stop breathing into the paper bag and like talk to each other a little bit.
Me too. Yeah, that would be good. But, well, it's been good to talk to you again.
Always good to talk to you.
And I, again, love the way this is going with all the colors.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I'm enjoying like the sort of colorful approach to this. I do keep thinking I'm screwing up something with the eyes that I'm like not 100% on it. I don't know why. What's the matter with you?
Her one iris is bigger than the other.
But I'm also going off of an AI example, and it's like the eyes in here are crazy looking. And I'm like, how much is that? Like, I need to divert from the reference to some degree, but I'm not sure in what ways I need to in order to make it feel right.
Right. That's a interesting point for something you mentioned earlier, that the Wizards of the Coast was saying nobody can even use it as a reference.
Yeah, good luck.
If you do it
Well,
correctly.
I don't even understand that distinction. It's like, oh, please go ahead. Please use copyrighted material as reference instead of this, like, public domain reference. Like, we will sue you if you use public domain reference. So go ahead and copy from copyrighted art material instead. It's like, what? Who's writing these policies? Is that really the policy? Like, I don't know if they have a policy. It was like no reference. I'm just saying, I heard through a friend that that was what the art director involved was saying. And I don't think that's an informed opinion, nor do I think it's an enforceable one. You know, I don't think that you can expect the artist to have to like reveal every bit of every reference material they use over the course of a painting, especially when they're not when they're not like infringing in any way or creating any legal liability for the company.
Right. And like for me, I use pieces as references, not necessarily an entire thing.
Right. Yeah. I wouldn't do something like this for a commission for a company like Wizards of the Coast. It would be on a board with 20 other pieces where it's like, I'm trying to create a very like, you know, youthful model-esque face. I'll have some AI things. I'll have some photos. It'll all be kind of mixed together and it'll be part of like a larger pastiche. And that's like, to say that that's like forbidden is a little bit of an overstatement, a little bit of overstepping, I think.
I'll be interested to see where that all.
Yeah, I'm really curious if it ends up sort of solidifying into some policies and like, what the artist community actually thinks of it, especially as like we see the mainstreamification of like AI tools hitting programs like Photoshop. Because it's like, hey, do the eyes on your character look wonky? Like, use this thing and it'll straighten out like facial features to make them more normalized, like in like one click. Or, hey, there's like this tool. Like right now they have a tool that allows you to like adjust the direction that a face is looking by a little bit. So if you want to turn the head 10 degrees, you can do that with AI. Like, are you going to say that is like making me like it's no longer my image because I turn the face 10 degrees, like using a tool in Photoshop? Like, give me a break.
Everybody will calm down, and hopefully I want all the artists to feel better and know that they're not.
First things first, let's have Twitter collapse and everyone kind of collectively get together and say that whole thing was a bit of a mess. Let's not do that again.
Yeah. And it would be nice if everybody started being nice to each other again. All this
Yeah.
vitriol is about anything, any topic is just.
Your JPEGs are immoral. Your immoral JPEGs are revealing your true character.
Mom,
Okay.
you?
Yeah.
Okay, well, you have a good evening.
Yes, you too. I'm over on time, so I see wonderful World of Stuff has entered the chat. He's always got interesting commentary, so I can go for 5 more minutes if Wonderful has like a take he wants to share.
I'm gonna bounce down. There he is.
Hey.
Hey there.
Hi.
Yeah, on here it's time now. I was just going to chit chat with you, but more of a what do you know? Do you have friends who are doing anything with NFTs right now? It seems to
yes, I know somebody who just had a big win with NFTs.
Right, I've just noticed it's blowing up again. As it like 3 years ago, so it went crazy, but then it's doing it again. It seems. How do you feel about it? I mean, how do you feel about it?
I made a bunch of money on them back when they were big last time, and I wouldn't mind making some more money with them if they come back. My understanding of NFTs is that they are largely a vehicle for creating leverage. That like people complained, it was never about the art, and I think it's true. I don't think it really was about the art. I think that the reason why NFTs are exciting to people is because they allow them to multiply their gains on crypto. So instead of just, getting 10x on ETH, if you 10x on your NFTs also, you get 100x return. And that's the reason why everyone was gambling with them. So I think that when we see crypto, if we see crypto spiking again, then we are going to see NFTs spiking along with them, because it's going to give people the opportunity to multiply their bets. And I really think it's that simple. And that's my big take on NFTs. And I'll be back there if people want to collect my art. I am perfectly happy to do it in all digital format. I never really bought the negative hype on NFTs being like fraud or abusive or whatever. I always thought they seemed fine. And even though there were plenty of people doing scams and stuff in them, I get scam phone calls every day, and I don't think that the phone system is a scam. So I think that there's good and bad actors in the space. I have a kind of low tolerance for the bullshit of it after having gone through it for a full cycle. So, I'll be back on the train again if it starts to roll. And I've got my eye on it this time. So I'll probably, there's been a couple of times over the last year where I thought maybe it was going to come back. If it's back now, sure. Like, I guess, we'll see what happens.
Cool. I wouldn't mind owning a Mohrbacher NFT as well. It'd be cool to have a one. Should I see this out? But yeah, that'd be cool. And I just didn't know how you felt about it. Obviously, now I know, because it's something I have no experience in. I have experience in every format of selling art, apart from it's just something I never touched. Yeah, and so I just just wanted your take. I will.
Well, yeah, that's my take. It's not particularly spicy, but I think if you look, it feels exhausting to me.
You imagine looking at it for the first time and going, well, I've got this weird and wacky art that I could put up there. It looks like it fits the, fits the criteria. And then I'm thinking,
Oh yeah,
it's hella confusing. It's like, what am I doing? 300 videos later, I'm still none the wiser.
Most of the things that happen in it are driven by gambling and greed, and not by the thing. People are. I don't think they're always even aware of the reasons why they're making the choices. They are. The narratives around it are so strange. Anyways, that's it. I'll be back next week. I'll be on time next week. I'm so sorry, everyone, for being late today, and I'll see you around.
Cheers.
Cheers.